couple of amazing folks from AppNexus who've been working on our mobile initiative for the past 2 or 3 quarters. So I'd like to bring on stage Andrew Eifler and Arel Lidow, two extraordinary gentlemen who are going to tell us about what they've been doing in mobile. Are you going to come up here? There we go. Awesome. OK. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Brian.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Arel Lidow, and I'm the product lead at AppNexus for mobile.
Hi, guys. I'm Andrew Eifler, Director of Strategy at AppNexus, and the strategy lead for mobile.
So you've heard Brian talk a lot today about mobile. And today, we want to back up and sort of tell the story of mobile at AppNexus. So about a year ago, Brian knocked on my door, Andrew's door. He said, guys, we think there's something to this mobile thing. People seem to be using these mobile devices. Brian at the time, just bought his first iPhone. And so we were trying to figure this out. So he tasked us with going and understanding mobile. We went and we spoke with a number of different clients. Here's a shot of our strategy room at AppNexus. We went and talked to probably 50, many of you in the crowd today, 50 clients and partners. And everybody kind of said different things. And our job was sort of to come back and synthesize this information and to put some meaning behind it. And I think, after looking at this long and hard, the one overwhelming thing that we heard time and time again was this catchphrase. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. Mobile is different. We heard this unanimously across the board. And so we asked clients, why is this different? We heard a variety of different reasons. So there are no cookies in mobile. Screen sizes are smaller. It's harder to get users to engage. You need to redesign your creatives and landing pages. They're different specs. You heard there's these mystical things, mediation, SDKs, different plumbing in mobile. There's different data to target on, carriers and devices, or hundreds of thousands, different devices. Heard that mobile is all about application downloads and app installs. Heard that there's lots of accidental clicks in mobile. I could go on and on. In fact, I did this exercise last week. I sat down. I tried to list out as many of these differences as I could. I think I got to about 65. I'm sure many of you could probably list more. Long story short, there are a lot of differences here.
All right. We practiced that toss. So it's easy to talk about the differences between mobile and display. But let's pause for a sec and take a look at the similarities between mobile and display. So the business models between mobile and display are fundamentally the same. We have publishers, we have advertisers, we have networks, and all of the same 3-letter acronyms that we talked about earlier that exist in the display space also exist in the mobile space. Not only are the same types of companies in both spaces, but those companies also make money in fundamentally the same way. They have cost per pricing, rev share. Overall, the business models look very similar in both spaces. In addition to the business models being the same, the actual advertisers and publishers are also the same. Now, there is some exception here with app-specific publishers, but by and large, there's far more overlap than there is difference. Since the business models are the same and the advertisers and publishers are the same, it would make sense that the buying and selling workflow would be the same. The way campaigns are set up, the UI, the overall workflow of getting advertising live, very similar between mobile and display. Along the same lines, success metrics are also the same. We're looking at impressions, we're looking at clicks, we're looking at conversions. Now, conversions here could be a different action. It could be click to call, it could be an app download, it could be an app install. But these are all really conversion events, and they work in a very similar way as they do in display. And lastly, optimization is the same. The way you match up supply and demand. And if Arel and I were to sit down today and create an optimization system from scratch, specifically for mobile, 85% of it would overlap with what already exists in the display space. So looking at it holistically, mobile is far more similar than it is different. All right.
So how do we reconcile this? So I just got up here. I told you that there are all these differences between mobile and display. And Andrew just said, well, hey, wait a second. They actually seem to be far more similar than different. So we debated this long and hard. I just showed you that long scrolling list of all these differences. So we actually took a look at these, and we scratched our head. And we started to see some patterns emerge. Specifically, we start to see that these all fall into one of 4 key categories. In fact, we believe that at the root of all the differences between mobile and display advertising, there are really 4 fundamental differences. So we're going to share those with you guys today. So first is behavior. So the way that users behave, I think we can all agree, is fundamentally different between mobile and display. So users use mobile devices differently. They move around. It could be a stadium, at a bar. Tend to have your mobile device on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Users install apps instead of browsing for content. So there are some major differences here. I think we can all agree on that. The second is environment, specifically the environment in which ads and content are shown. So users can touch instead of click. Screen sizes are different here. You have apps instead of browsers. There are all sorts of new capabilities, accelerometers, all sorts of new things that you can do with devices. So environment, fundamental, there are some big differences here. Third is what we've termed plumbing. Now, plumbing is kind of boring, so we're not going to bore you with all the details here. I've drawn some nifty diagrams here, but there are some fundamental differences in the way that specifically mobile app publishers choose to monetize their inventory. In the world of display advertising, you tend to have ad tags making calls directly from a browser to different ad servers. Whereas in mobile, apps tend to go through a middle layer, a mediator or an ad server that in turn makes calls to other ad servers. There's also SDKs as well. They're a little bit different from ad tags. Again, we're not going to go into too much detail here, but there are some major differences here. And last but not least, this is probably the source of most of the confusion, and we think this is probably the most fundamental difference between mobile and display, is that of user identity. So the way that users are identified is fundamentally different. You heard us allude to the fact that there are no cookies in mobile apps. We've thought a lot about this. I actually think it boils down to 4 key challenges here. So this diagram sort of neatly shows it. Each of these arrows represents a fork in the road, so to speak, where a user could be identified as 2 different people potentially. And we think that in order for mobile to really come full circle, you have to solve many of these problems. So first is identifying users across different devices. Very difficult to do today. It's identifying me across my iPad, iPhone, PC. Second is identifying users across browsers and apps as the same person. So browsers use cookies, apps don't use cookies. Third is identifying users across multiple apps. So identifying me as the same person across Angry Birds, Words with Friends, or any of the other apps that I use. There are some trickiness there. And last but not least, identifying users on mobile Safari, a little bit tricky because of cookie access. So in sum, there are really 4 key differences: user behavior, environment in which ads are shown, plumbing, and user identity. If you understand these things, you get it. We think you understand really all those differences I showed you can fall under one of these 4 buckets.
All right. So what about ecosystem? You notice that in the list that Arel just presented, he didn't include ecosystem as one of the main differences between mobile and display. So here's where we have the pleasure of presenting directly before Terry Kawaja, and I'm sure he'll have an opinion about this as well. But in our view, the mobile ad ecosystem is not fundamentally different from the display ad ecosystem. Rather, they're both part of a larger ecosystem, and there's just those 4 key differences that need to be addressed. Further, we see most of the companies in the mobile space aligning towards addressing one of those key differences. There are location-based ad providers addressing the behavioral difference between mobile and display. The fact that consumers on mobile phones could be out of their home, they could be going somewhere. There's also app install networks taking advantage of the fact that consumers on mobile phones usually prefer to download an app than go to a mobile site. There are companies that are solving the problem, the environment where the ad is shown. Mobile-rich media companies that are taking advantage of unique capabilities of mobile devices. The horizontal versus portrait orientation, an accelerometer in the phone or a camera, new ad experiences on mobile devices. We believe that many of the SSPs and DSPs in this space are actually addressing the plumbing difference between mobile and display, the back-end differences of getting ads to users. And lastly, there are companies oriented towards addressing the user identity problem, identifying individual users across devices, across sessions and across apps.
Great. So we said that there are these 4 key differences. So we've thought a lot about these differences, and we took a step even further back. If you look at these differences, another pattern starts to emerge. So differences in behavior, the way that users behave, environment in which ads are shown, by and large, are very good differences. So these represent entirely new ways to differentiate your business. In fact, they're entirely new businesses that are being formed, and by and large, they're adding value to the world. These are very good things. And then there are the issues of plumbing and user identity. So by and large, we see these as friction. We don't think that they're necessarily easy problems to solve. We think companies are adding value by solving them, but we think that there is a lot of friction caused by these 2 things. We'd go so far to say that if you removed differences in plumbing and user identity today, that mobile would be far more efficiently monetized very, 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 very quickly. So our goal is to minimize this friction. This is how we see AppNexus fitting into all this. And today, we're thrilled to launch the AppNexus mobile beta. You heard Brian talk about this. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to walk through some of the highlights of what we're actually releasing today. So in addition to all the targeting capabilities of our platform, we've extended the targeting capabilities and added new types of targeting specifically for the new dimensions that you'd want to target on in mobile. Things like the type of device, operating system versions, device make model, carrier targeting, connection type, latitude, longitude, all different dimensions that would matter to you as a buyer of mobile inventory. Second, we've added new hooks into our platform to allow you to gain easier access to mobile app inventory. So in addition to doing RTB integrations with major mobile supply sources, we've actually built in new server-side APIs that enable you to go work directly with app publishers or with the major mediators or ad servers in the space. We see this as a major point of friction. We think that this is an important step forward. We've gone out, as I mentioned, we've integrated with sort of all the major RTB supply sources in the space. We're now at close to 2 billion true mobile impressions a day. Those are actually mobile optimized sites, mobile apps, impressions actually designed for a mobile device. This is growing very, very quickly, exponentially. We expect that this will double in the next couple of months. Next, so one of the things we're very excited about, so we've actually re-architected a major component of our platform. So the way that we fundamentally identify users, we typically would attach them to a cookie ID. So we've re-architected that. We can now have multiple different identifiers for the same user, and we can actually map them together through our new mapping service. And that all ties back to a unified AppNexus user ID. We've actually done this specifically on, we've gone ahead and solved the problem of identifying users across different apps. We can now offer somewhat reliable frequency capping, conversion tracking, targeting across different apps. And we're going to be investing a lot more in this space. Of course, there's lots more stuff. We're actually doing a session afterwards that many of you will be invited to, where we'll actually go through and do a deep dive into many of these features. We'll have a number of webinars that will follow up. We'll go into more detail on what we're releasing here. And of course, this is really just the beginning of it. Everything you've seen today is just an extension of the AppNexus platform. As Brian mentioned, we're in this for the long run. We're making major investments here. You're going to see us make a lot more investments around these things. So in closing, we said that there are 4 key differences. And we said that behavior and environment actually represent very good things. And then there's the friction, plumbing and user identity. Our goal is to minimize that friction. We hope to work with all of you in the coming weeks and months to help us to partner with you to minimize that friction. We think that we can move mobile advertising forward. Thank you.